Hey guys, how's it going? I'm the Duke of Italy, your favorite lo-fi, just wild music YouTuber. And welcome back to another pleasant discussion onto some more Caveman riff metal albums. Last time we concluded our black metal listening and managed our way into some death metal. And today it gets filthy because we got some more death metal for you guys, but not too filthy just yet, because first is a hot take for a cold album. This is Winter's Into Darkness. And after that hell of an intro by me, we get the opposite of that on this album. It's not a hell of an album, and this is where the hot take is, because a lot of people seem to like this album a lot. So this is like an early version of like Funeral Doom metal. Funeral Doom didn't really exist yet. It was kind of Death Doom going into Funeral Doom, a little bit of sludge. It's raw. Vocals struggle a bit. They're kind of like a little raspy, but like they don't have any power to them. They're not percussive at all, and they're not growling or grinding away. They don't sound like pushing a stone against another stone. It is dismal at points, which gives it some atmosphere. As you can tell by this album cover, it wants to be dismal. But wow, is it the most gutless metal sound I have ever heard. Seriously, this thing isn't heavy at all. It's like, I mean, yeah, all the weight in the world is heavy, but like how much of that is air, and you have any trouble lifting that. It's just super hollow, and the riffs are not there. They sound like garbage. There isn't a single song on here that I would recommend to anybody. The guitars are gutless. The vocals suck. The songwriting is weak. It's boring to tears. I remember working out to this thing and wanting to quit so many times because I just didn't want to even get through this thing. If you like it, tell me why. Tell me why you like it down below. I'm genuinely curious why you guys like it. And I like Funeral Doom. I like some drone metal. I like some Funeral Doom. I like a lot of sludge. I like some Death Doom, as you guys will see. But I do not like Winter. Yeah, it gets a pour. It's one of the worst albums on the chart. It's probably the worst. It is like the most awful sound in metal. It's just so... if the songwriting wasn't bad enough, the production is like non-existent. It's so raw that it's totally destroyed. It's a destroyed sound. It's really hollow. You get like a little bit of reverb, but like imagine if the vocalist from Blasphemy had had a tracheotomy or something. Like imagine if it was that. Like it's just it's so disappointing after people hype it up so much. And you know it's bad because it was bad enough for me to actually review it and rate your music, and I never do that. And next, forget all that noise, we got some Sepultura with the Morbid Visions. And this specific one the chart tells us to listen to has the attached Bestial Devastation. Imagine if you took Poison, the thrash black death metal band, the one of the first of its kind, and you gave it some better production, and then you get something as classic as it gets with some solid songwriting and some real heaviness. And it's really funny that I'm talking about this right now because the Cavalera brothers, who are started Sepultura in the 80s. They ended up doing Soulfly, which is more of a new metal, alt metal band in the 2000s. And just recently, they re-recorded under the Cavalera name Morbid Visions, which I think is awesome. And I like this because there's some decent doomy moments and there's a really tight drum performance. It is clearly Brazilian metal in nature. It's very wild stuff, kind of like Sarcophago, a little bit of Holocausto, or even Volcano. But Sepultura is really known for being that super aggressive, riffy thrash metal sound that I personally really love. This isn't my favorite Sepultura album, but man, it's pretty grindy and grimy. It's still pretty lo-fi. It's better than Poison, but it's still lo-fi. Personally, the Bestial Devastation part, which I believe is either an EP or a demo, I'm not that educated on the Sepultura history, I actually like it a bit more. It's a bit more cavernous and noisy, which as lo-fi as it already is, I think this is to its benefit. But yeah, it's great. And then we get Death Strike with Effin' Death. Classic, raw production, death metal. The vocals just roar over this whole thing. It is sick. It sounds awesome, and it's very energetic, and I love that the bass has so much heft in it. It's like really percussive. There's a little bit of a hardcore punk influence here with this just pummeling driving rhythms. It really doesn't let up. And it's some primitive stuff, and it's never that fast. Like the blast beats don't get like to an incredible speed, but it's the momentum of the album that really is doing well here. And this thing has attitude. That's what's so sick about it, is the attitude. It's like kind of like some stenchcore, but it's also kind of like some Damar or like some Havahedge. It's like kind of like hateful, aggressive tone that is really unmatched in most death metal. And then you just combine it with the stenchcore vibes, make it a little death metal, make it just as grimy as those before, and you got a great album. I don't know if I made that clear or not, or if the text on my forehead didn't, but listen to it. And then we get Cyanide with The Dying Truth. This album's pretty monkey. It's pretty monkey. It's a sludgy tone, some great vocals, tiny bit of a doomy style groove with everything going on here, but it is deep and heavy and grimy. It's kind of gross. It's like dusty, kind of cavernous feeling. But if there ever was an album to have muscles, it is this one. This one it's great lifting music. First of all, I would know literally every album on this chart I lifted to, except maybe one, but I don't really remember. And this one is just great for it. It's so heavy. It hits really hard. People will often say that the snare on this album is bad because it's open, kind of the grindcore sound, but it's not as bad as like a Saint Anger type situation. And it's death metal. You're allowed to have that popping open snare sound because sometimes it works. For grindcore, it totally works because it's so hard hitting. It's pummeling. And here, I think it works really well. This is like the most based album on the chart today, potentially. It's just it's heavy. If you want an album that is heavy, good lifting music, doomy pace, honestly, maybe a good pace to do squats to. So if you're doing leg day, Cyanide's The Dying Truth, that might be it. But yeah, it's just great. It's so good. Next we get Divine Eve's 2007 EP compilation, which is Upon the Ashes Scorn the World. And oddly enough, it's got kind of a Motorhead quality with its sort of driving section, but it's really just like grinding death doom, which the alternating between those paces is something that's pretty impressive. But you have thick, airy bass though, which almost has like a stoner rock quality at points, like maybe like a little bit of Sleep, some Owl in there. But what I like about this one a lot is that it's so varied. You know, you really get some decent variety here. And of course, because it's a compilation, you always see different styles, but like it kind of works in a sort of like a full-length style. Unfortunately though, the production is a bit muddy, and it's kind of to its detriment. Like I said, the stoner bass tone and with the guitars, it just doesn't really have life to a lot of it, but it kind of makes up for this in heaviness and energy and just sheer diversity. And some tracks are better than others, and I know I said it kind of works as a full length in terms of diversity, but I feel like they do clash with each other a little bit, so I think you would get more enjoyment out of the individual material here rather than compilation, but you know, that's up to the listener. I still think it's pretty good though, but it's not as good as this next band. This is Cryptworm with their self-titled album. Now, if you like Cannibal Corpse, you'll probably like Cryptworm. Bouncy death metal. It is a brisk 12-minute EP, and since this EP, the band has released a full length, so I might check that out at some point. But this is some really solid OG thrashy death metal. Like if you like Excoriate but want it bouncier, or if you like early Cannibal Corpse and want just a little tighter, maybe not as good, just like a little tighter, or even like Pentagram, the band from Chile, you know, you might find something you really like with this one. But honestly, I think you should just check it out anyway because it's really good. There's some really sick, slow, sludgy build points that I think transition to breakdowns really well, which there aren't that many breakdowns. I think there are about 2 on this EP, but they hit really hard. And I can appreciate bands that have a sparing amount of breakdowns. I don't want to just have it the whole time. I'm not into deathcore or slam at all. Metalcore is a mixed bag for me. But what I like about the breakdowns on this album, especially off the first track, it takes 4.5 minutes to reach it. So it really makes you wait until you reach the breakdown, which is how a breakdown should be. You should have one per song, and it should hit like a truck. And here it absolutely does. And for reasons like that, I can't recommend this EP enough. It's pretty great. So I'll probably check out the other one. And next we get another EP, Pestigore, with Twisted Perversions, Unbearable Delight. Chunky, primitive death metal. and it's got these tight little tremolo riffs that are just a little bit buzzy, a little bit chainsaw action going on there. And there is not a ton to work with because this is just the rawest thing. It is so raw that it's not even remotely clear. Like, good luck telling where anything is on this release. But I will say it has a nice dark atmosphere to the whole thing. So it's kind of based, but like it's kind of just okay at the same time. You know, I love how aggressive and stupid it is, but like, yeah, I mean, that only takes you so far. Next, we got a band that is truly based, maybe like top 5, maybe top 3 old school death metal albums for me. This is Infestors, To the Depths in Degradation. This is a band that has such little material. I think it has an EP or a demo and this full length right here, and they've just called it quits ever since. But this is, and I repeat, not a good album to work out to. I really mean it is not a good album to work out to. And what I mean by that is the atmosphere on this thing, as you can tell by this album cover, this deeply disturbing and atmospheric album cover, it is the filthiest, most dismal atmosphere of any death metal album I think I've ever heard. Like, if Immolation feels hopeless, then dude, I don't even know what to tell you, because this is truly hopeless. Like, lifting this thing, you just got a voice in your head telling you to stop, and it's not even worth it. It's just like, you're gonna die and go to hell. Gosh, I hope my mom isn't watching, because these are depressing thoughts. I don't even know if I would use this to get anyone into death metal. I would use it to get black metal fans into death metal. Saying that, there are a few reasons why that wouldn't quite work, because it is very, very brutal. It's not that percussive, but it's like, it feels like sludge. Like you're just wading through this whole thing. It's so heavy. It's so disturbing. The riffs feel genuinely serious. This doesn't feel like Cannibal Corpse's bouncy, fun riffs. This feels like actual hail. It feels like you're melting the whole time. And it's not like overly comical, over the top death metal where the atmosphere is like your bodily remains or in a sewer runoff and there's disease everywhere. It's like, no, dude, it's like you're being picked apart by crows as you're walking to the gates that say, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter." The doomy melodicism really sticks out. As much as this is a Caveman riff album, it's very simple to play. It's just, it all sticks out, and the vocals sound so desperate, or actually more hopeless, rather. Honestly, it's kind of a scary album. The atmosphere is that pervasive. I'm not quite sure, but I think I was able to pick out a little bit of organ in this thing. I don't think that's really true. It might just be due to the production being a little bit on the raw side, but you have like a full guitar sound here. It's mixed very solidly, but it is just a hellish, horrible sound. It's interesting and highly varied, but it is just in this awful tone and atmosphere. It's seriously something that, like, I think you should think about how you're doing before listening to it, because it's great, and there's some point in your life where you should listen to it. And this takes us back into basically what I was referring to Infestor not being back to the over-the-top comical death metal route. Impetigo, Horror of the Zombies. It's like an early version of Mortician, but like not as good. Super Caveman, sludgy, chugging, simplistic riffs, mostly power chords, still kind of classic. It's kind of like Mortician again, where it has horror movie samples. But one thing that's nice about this album is it's decently groovy and not a ton of blast beats, which is something I can kind of appreciate, you know, kind of reserving the speed for when you need it. And actually, it's not insanely brutal, but it's definitely fun at points, despite this having a grindy nature to the whole thing. And the vocals are relatively clean. They feel like kind of extreme thrash zone. Yeah, it's silly, but it's usually pretty good, so I give this one a good. And speak of the devil, Mortician, Chainsaw Dismemberment. Whew. This is an album. Brutal death metal mixed with death grind. One of the bands to innovate the genres. Imagine being a function of two different genres, being important enough to help death grind become a real thing in its modern state, and to help brutal death metal become anything. Because before Effigy of the Forgotten, we got Mortician's demo. And Suffocation had a demo before that, but I'm just saying. And Drum Machine, which for a drum machine, it doesn't sound too bad. It is absurdly fast. Like, I remember before I even listened to any death metal at all, I was like, let's see if these Mortician guys are worth anything. And I was playing a song in my bed, and I was like, when is this horror sample gonna end? Because we're 3 minutes into a 4 minute song, and then you just get machine gun, like the fastest blast beat you've ever heard, and just guitar, and it's just pig growling, and it's just gross. And that's Mortician for you. That's what they're like. The bass tone is just consistent rumble, real deep sludgy riffs, and despite it being a drum machine, it has different beats programmed, so it goes into like the doomy or like the breakdown sections, I guess. It is a simple album, and of course, putting the ridiculous death metal next to the horror samples, it's a little goofy, to be completely honest with you guys, but at the same time, it's awesome. It's so iconic for a reason. There's a reason people get into brutal death metal with Mortician, because they're so freaking fun on Spotify, but in person, you're just like, ugh, it's awful. It's great. I got my old buddy in Fallacy. He's a big fan of Mortician. Even saw them live one time. I should get his thoughts and tell you guys about that some other time. But like, geez, it's a band. This is great. And after that, we have Zom with Flesh Assimilation to keep the pleasantries going. It's got a punky attitude, a little bit of stench core in there, and the riffs are pretty blackened. You get a whole lot of tremolo in here, and it doesn't quite feel like old school death metal tremolo. It's more almost actually blackened. Real punchy bass though. That is the part that is really nice here, is that the bass is really percussive, really good mid-range there. A lot of sick doomy parts, certainly not as much funny business going on here. Definitely some good atmosphere, but it's really good fighting music. It's heavy stuff. I love it. It's great. It's fighting music, and it's simple, but it is effective. And then we get Slaughter's Strappado, which is a 23-minute album. It's classic. I don't know why. Yeah, it's just OG caveman death thrash. It's like, here's the thing about old school death metal, and way more importantly, death thrash. At the time it was probably amazing and innovative, but like, it so quickly got replaced by old school death metal, especially bands like Cannibal Corpse and Infester, where it was just on the verge of being brutal death metal. And then Suffocation came around with the bangers. And then at that point, how much death thrash are you going to listen to? Sure, you're going to listen to some Morbid Saint. Sure, I guess you could technically say like some Slayer. I would argue that Rain in Blood can feel heavier than some old school death metal. Certainly some melodic death metal. But that's kind of a problem with Strappado. It's like, it was important for the time. It just doesn't hold up. There is one unique part about it that I really like. The guitar solos are super noisy. There's just so much going on with them. For me, it's kind of lacking in aggression, and I think that's probably due to the production. And by no means is it bad. It's just not enough. So I'm willing to say it's okay. And to end the day, we got a band I instantly fell in love with, Jungle Rot, with Slaughter the Weak. Yum, 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 yum. Good stuff. Good old bouncy death metal. The bounciest. And the simplest riffs of all time. I was literally working out to this thing, listening to one song, and I was like, I can play this. Picked up my friend's Telecaster, hi Miguel, and I just power chords, and I'm like, I got the song. And then it slows down at a point, and the tempo speeds back up, Not too complex songwriting here. There's a little thrash influence with the sort of swank beats going on there, which actually gives it some real good aggression. There's even a little bit of syncopation on the riff side, but it's very, very catchy, which catchy death metal is not something I think about a lot. There's some really nice tom fills, excellent breakdowns, which you will hear often. And it's very energetic, and there's great pacing, and it is stupid heavy. It's also pretty well written, you're never bored. Basically, think of death metal with the easiest riffs that are also just the best. And it's only a 27-minute long album, but it does have some bonus tracks, and I actually listened to them, and they are sick. But yeah, I wanted to end the video with another great album, and like I said, it's the end of the video. How do you guys enjoy these caveman riff death metal albums and EPs? If you like them, tell me how you like them, how much you like them. If you don't like them, tell me why you don't like them. If you're going to tell me that Winter's better than Jungle Rot, sure, you should tell Jungle Rot. Because I bet while the Winter guys are wasting away, chain smoking, the dudes from Jungle Rot are hitting new PRs every week. And they're sick for that. And what else is sick is my Discord, which is in the description below, as well as my Instagram and Twitter, where on Twitter I'll just say the most unhinged stuff, and on Instagram I'll post I don't know, whatever's going on in my life. But on Discord, we like to talk about music. And also down below, you can comment more stuff, more than the fact that you just like or dislike my taste, the music I talk about, my face, my hair, my bar setup with no drinks back there, because I removed them to make this video look a little more kid-friendly, while still talking about Infester. But I think that's about it. Have a good day. Bye.